Nathan Cole sat quietly in the corner of the subway car, his broad shoulders hunched slightly forward, making him seem smaller than his full 6'2" frame would suggest. His graying hair peeked out from beneath a worn army cap, shadowing a face carved with hardship. The rugged lines of his sharp jaw, weathered skin, and a brutal scar tracing down his left cheek told a silent story. A story written in blood, loss, and survival. His faded olive-green military jacket clung tightly to his powerful build, the ghost of a staff sergeant insignia barely visible on the shoulder. The subway car rattled through the dark veins beneath New York City, the dim fluorescent lights casting long, uneven shadows across the faces of the few late-night commuters. It was nearly empty, just a scattering of people lost in their own worlds. A young couple nestled in a corner, oblivious to everything but their glowing phones. A businessman slumped against the glass doors, snoring softly. An elderly woman, wrapped in a thick coat, quietly knitted, her fingers working automatically through a skein of pale blue yarn. But it was Nathan's presence that hung heavy over the car. Though he sat still, doing nothing to draw attention, people couldn't help but glance at him and then quickly look away. His steel blue eyes, cold, distant, haunted, kept them at bay. To them, he was an oddity, a ghost in civilian clothes. Something unplaceable, unsettling. "Who's that guy?" a teenage boy whispered, nudging his friend. "I dunno," the friend muttered, sneaking another glance. "Looks like some washed-up soldier or something." The words cut deep, though Nathan gave no sign he'd heard. He was used to it, the way civilians judged the uniform and the scars without knowing the man beneath. They didn't see the deserts he'd crossed, the battles fought, the friends buried. All they saw was a relic, an outsider. The subway jolted violently as it screeched through another bend. Nathan shifted, adjusting his seat with a low grunt as the old wound in his knee, a gift from shrapnel years ago, throbbed in protest. Cold weather always made it worse. "Breathe. Focus. Keep your head down," he told himself. Just another ride home. But even as he tried to shrink into himself, Nathan's instincts refused to sleep. His gaze slid methodically across the car, cataloging faces, exits, possibilities. It was automatic. Trained. And when the train slowed, brakes shrieking in protest, and two men boarded at the far end, Nathan's every nerve went taut. Something about them wasn't right. The taller one wore a heavy black hoodie, his face mostly hidden. His partner was stockier, with a shaved head, jittering slightly as his eyes darted around the car. Nathan's stomach tightened. Predators. He knew the look. Had seen it too many times, in back alleys, war zones, broken streets of occupied cities. The taller man's hand dipped into his jacket. Nathan caught the faint glint of metal. "Stay calm. Watch." The stocky man swaggered down the aisle, his grin wide and predatory. "Ladies and gentlemen," he bellowed, his voice unnaturally loud in the hush of the car. "I need your attention." Conversations died. Phones lowered. The young couple froze. The businessman stirred awake, blinking groggily. The elderly woman's knitting slipped from her fingers to the grimy floor. The taller man produced a pistol, holding it lazily, almost mockingly, at the passengers. "We're gonna make this real simple," he drawled. "Hand over your wallets, your jewelry, your phones, and everyone gets to walk off this train." Panic blossomed. The businessman fumbled in his pockets. The couple clung to each other, faces pale. The elderly woman clutched her handbag tightly to her chest, trembling. Nathan didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the gunman, his breathing slowing deliberately. Timing was everything. The stocky man moved towards the elderly woman first, looming over her. "Come on, Grandma," he sneered, snatching at her bag. "Don't make me ask twice." Nathan's muscles coiled. When the man lunged, Nathan struck. He moved like a shadow exploding into motion. One moment seated, the next a blur. His hand clamped onto the man's wrist, twisting sharply. There was a sickening crack. The stocky man howled, the gun tumbling from his grasp. Nathan kicked it away, sending it skittering under a row of seats. The taller thug barked in alarm, swinging his own weapon toward Nathan, but he was too slow. Nathan closed the distance in 2 strides, knocking the gun wide as the thug pulled the trigger. The shot shattered a window, glass raining down, but Nathan didn't falter. He slammed his shoulder into the man's chest, driving him into the wall with bone-crunching force. The thug crumpled, the pistol slipping from limp fingers. Nathan snatched it up, flicking the safety on before tossing it out of reach. "Hands on your head," Nathan barked, voice low, deadly. Both men obeyed instantly, faces twisted with shock and pain. The passengers stared, wide-eyed, too stunned even to breathe. Nathan didn't wait for applause. He pulled the emergency brake, feeling the entire train lurch violently to a stop. "Someone call 911, he ordered, without raising his voice. The businessman scrambled for his phone, babbling incoherently into it. Nathan stood guard, body still humming with adrenaline, watching the subdued men for any sign of treachery. But they stayed where they were, cowed. Minutes later, the screech of sirens echoed through the tunnel. Police stormed the train, guns drawn, shouting commands. Nathan raised his hands calmly, letting them see he was no threat. He stepped back, allowing the officers to swarm over the two criminals, forcing them roughly to the floor, cuffing them with ruthless efficiency. A detective in a rumpled suit, older, tired, pushed through the chaos. "You," he said, pointing at Nathan. "Step over here." Nathan obeyed silently. The detective eyed him up and down. "Name?" "Nathan Cole." The detective scribbled it down. "You military?" Nathan nodded once. "Staff sergeant." "Retired?" The detective grunted. "Yeah, I figured. Only way someone moves like that." Nathan shrugged. "You're lucky," the detective added. "Coulda gotten yourself or others killed." Nathan's voice was calm. "Coulda let them rob and hurt innocent people." The detective stared for a long moment, then sighed. "Yeah," he muttered. "Guess you're right." They took Nathan's statement. Precise. Clinical. No embellishment. Finally, the detective clapped him on the shoulder. "You're free to go." Nathan nodded, pulling his cap lower as he slipped through the murmuring crowd. He climbed the stairs to the street, blending into the cold night. But something had changed. Phones buzzed around him. Strangers pointed. Murmurs filled the air. "That's him. The subway hero. Did you see what he did?" Nathan froze as he caught sight of a video playing on someone's screen. A grainy shot of him wrestling the gunman down with brutal efficiency. His heart hammered painfully in his chest. Not a hero, he thought desperately. Just a man who couldn't stand by. But the city had already decided otherwise. As he disappeared into the darkened streets, Nathan Cole realized his life would never be the same again. Nathan moved quickly, slipping through alleys and side streets, his boots silent on the concrete. He kept his head down, his cap pulled low over his brow. But no matter how fast he walked, he couldn't outrun the whispers. They were everywhere now. In the air, in the electric buzz of phone screens lighting up faces, in the way strangers' eyes flicked toward him, and then widened with recognition. Videos of what had happened on the subway were already viral. Nathan Cole, the subway hero, the headlines said. A nameless man who stood against violence when no one else could. He cursed under his breath, shoving his hands deep into his jacket pockets as he rounded a corner. The air was sharp with the scent of rain, and the sky above churned with heavy, restless clouds. He needed to get off the streets. Fast. Nathan ducked into an old diner, one of those places where the coffee was bitter and the lights buzzed slightly overhead. A few scattered patrons sat hunched in booths, and a tired-looking waitress wiped down a counter with a rag that had seen better days. He slid into a booth near the back, his back against the wall out of habit, his eyes on the door. The waitress approached, giving him a weary smile. "Wallet be, hon? Coffee. Black." She nodded and shuffled away, leaving Nathan alone with the low murmur of conversation and the distant hiss of the kitchen. He stared out the window, watching the city move on without him. It always had. It always would. Minutes later, the coffee arrived. He wrapped his hands around the chipped ceramic mug, letting the heat seep into his fingers. He was just taking his first sip when the bell above the door jingled. Two men in cheap suits entered, talking quietly. Nathan's instincts sharpened immediately. Something about their movements, calculated, scanning, set him on edge. Not cops. Too loose. Too casual. Reporters. One of them, a tall, thin man with slicked back hair and sharp eyes, caught sight of Nathan almost immediately. His lips curved into a predator's smile. Nathan cursed silently. The man approached, slipping into the booth across from him without invitation. "Nathan Cole," he said smoothly, as if greeting an old friend. "Hell of a thing you did down there tonight." Nathan said nothing, sipping his coffee. The second man, shorter and rounder, fumbled with a voice recorder, setting it on the table between them. "We're with the New York Sentinel," the first man said. "Name's Derek Flynn. My buddy here is Mike. We'd love to hear your side of the story." Nathan stared at them for a long moment, then set his mug down with a soft clink. "There's no story," he said finally. "Just two idiots who thought they could hurt people. I stopped them. That's it." Flynn leaned forward, his eyes glittering. "Come on, man. People are eating this up. Subway hero saves dozens. You're a phenomenon. Overnight sensation. You could have interviews, book deals. Hell, a movie deal if you wanted. Nathan's jaw tightened. I'm not interested. Mike chuckled nervously, glancing at Flynn, who pressed on undeterred. Look, Nathan, you're not going to stay anonymous for long. That video's got over 2 million views already. They're going to find you. They're going to put a face to the name. Might as well control the narrative. Nathan's gaze was like ice. I didn't do it for attention. Flynn smirked. Nobody said you did. But attention's coming whether you like it or not. Nathan pushed back his chair and stood slowly. The reporters tensed, as if expecting violence. He simply tossed a few crumpled bills onto the table and walked away without another word. Out on the street, the rain had begun to fall, fat, cold drops that soaked his jacket instantly. Nathan pulled the collar up, blending into the river of umbrellas and hurried footsteps. He needed to disappear. He couldn't go home. Too obvious. Too easy to track. Instead, he turned toward the one place in the city that had always offered a kind of anonymity. The old veterans' shelter down on 38th Street. A battered brick building tucked between a pawn shop and an abandoned laundromat. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of damp wool and cheap coffee. A few men sat slumped in battered armchairs, lost in their own private wars. The woman behind the desk looked up as he entered. Her name was Carla, ex-Navy. She ran the shelter with the kind of no-nonsense efficiency that kept people alive. Rough night, she asked, raising an eyebrow. You could say that. She studied him for a moment, then nodded toward an empty cot in the corner. You know the rules. Nathan gave her a brief nod and made his way over, dropping his backpack to the floor and sitting heavily on the cot. For a while, he simply sat there, listening to the rain hammer the roof, feeling the familiar ache settle into his bones. But peace, it seemed, was not going to be easy to find. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Almost. But something told him to answer. He slid his thumb across the screen and held it to his ear. Yeah. There was a brief pause, then a woman's voice, low, urgent. Mr. Cole, my name's Jessica Lane. I'm with Channel 9 News. We need to talk. Nathan closed his eyes, grinding his teeth. I don't do interviews. This isn't about an interview, Jessica said quickly. It's about your safety. That caught his attention. What are you talking about? You made enemies tonight, she said, her voice tight. Those 2 men you stopped? They weren't working alone. Nathan's heart slowed. How do you know that? Because their boss just put out a message, she said. He wants revenge. And he's offering a lot of money to anyone who can find you. Nathan's grip tightened on the phone. You're telling me there's a hit out on me? Not just you, Jessica said grimly. Anyone who helps you too. Nathan stood slowly, his mind racing. Where are you? He demanded. I'm 2 blocks from the shelter, she said. Black SUV. Tinted windows. Nathan didn't hesitate. He grabbed his backpack and moved, his boots pounding against the concrete as he burst into the rain-soaked street once again. He spotted the SUV immediately. Jessica Lane was younger than he expected, mid-30s maybe, with sharp eyes and a professional air. She leaned across the passenger seat and pushed open the door. Get in, she said. Nathan hesitated for only a second, then slid inside. The SUV pulled away smoothly into the night. You have no idea what you stepped into, Jessica said, glancing at him. Those guys you took down, small-time enforcers for a crew called the Vario Kings. Nasty piece of work. Drugs, guns, human trafficking, and you humiliated them. Nathan exhaled slowly, staring out the window at the blurry lights of the city. Great, he muttered. Just what I needed. Jessica handed him a tablet. Look. He took it. On the screen was a post from a dark web forum, grainy, crude, but unmistakable. A bounty. His face. A price. $50,000 dead or alive. Nathan's stomach turned. He had survived wars. He had survived betrayals, roadside bombs, ambushes. And now, the war was coming back for him, right here, in the streets of the city he barely called home. You need to disappear, Jessica said. Now! Nathan's jaw tightened. Running's never been my style. Jessica shook her head. This isn't about pride. It's about survival. Nathan sat in silence, the weight of it all pressing down on him. Finally, he spoke. If I go underground, they'll just find someone else to hurt. Someone who looks like me. Someone in the wrong place at the wrong time. Jessica didn't answer. Because she knew he was right. Nathan leaned back, closing his eyes. When he opened them again, they were clear. Cold. Focused. I'm not running, he said. If they want to fight, they'll get one. Jessica stared at him. You're crazy. Nathan smiled grimly. Yeah, he said. I get that a lot. Outside, the rain fell harder, washing the city clean. But Nathan Cole knew better. Some stains never washed away. Some battles never ended. And tonight, the real war was just beginning. Jessica drove without speaking, weaving through the dripping streets with practiced ease. Nathan stared out the window, his reflection a ghost among the neon lights. Every instinct screamed at him to move. Strike first. Take the fight to them. But not yet. First, he needed information. He turned to Jessica, his voice low. Where's their base? She shook her head quickly. You can't go after them alone. You think they're just gonna line up and let you pick them off? These guys are organized. Armed. You'd be dead before you even crossed the street. Nathan's lips twisted in a bitter smile. Won't be the first time I've been outnumbered. Jessica hesitated, then pulled the SUV to the side of a deserted street and put it in park. She pulled out a folder from under her seat, thick, full of grainy surveillance photos, maps, printouts. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Been busy. She shrugged. Let's just say you're not the only one who thinks the Vario Kings are a plague. My station's been running an expose on them for months. Corrupt cops, politicians looking the other way. They're untouchable. Nathan flipped through the photos. Faces. Names. Locations. There, near the bottom, a warehouse down by the docks. Faded and crumbling, it was a perfect fortress for men who didn't want to be found. Jessica leaned closer, her voice tight. They run everything out of there. Drugs, weapons shipments, people. You walk into that place alone, you're a dead man. Nathan closed the folder, his decision made. I won't be alone. Jessica frowned. What are you talking about? Nathan's voice was steady. I'm gonna need your help. She stared at him like he'd grown another head. I'm not a soldier. No, Nathan said calmly. You're something better. You have eyes. Ears. A voice people listen to. Jessica swallowed hard, realizing the scope of what he was asking. You want me to set them up, she whispered. I want you to expose them, Nathan corrected. Bury them so deep the city can't ignore it anymore. Jessica sat back, exhaling slowly. This is insane. Nathan sipped the lukewarm coffee she handed him earlier, his expression unreadable. Yeah, he said. It is. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain pounding against the windshield. Then Jessica nodded. Okay, what do you need? Nathan's plan was simple. Dangerous. Reckless. Perfect. They would lure the Vario Kings out of their fortress. Draw them into a trap, where Nathan could dismantle them piece by piece, while Jessica broadcasted it live to the world. Not just another hidden crime buried in the city's underbelly. Not this time. Jessica worked her contacts, feeding false information into the underground network. Word spread fast. The subway hero was hiding nearby, vulnerable. Bait! Nathan set up in an abandoned factory just a few blocks from the docks. It had been gutted years ago. Broken windows, rusting beams, graffiti scrawled across every surface. It smelled of rot and despair. Perfect. He moved through the shadows, setting up crude traps, tripwires, alarms made from old cans and fishing line, blind spots he could vanish into at a moment's notice. It was almost like being back in Fallujah. Almost. As he worked, his mind slipped backward. Flashbacks unbidden and brutal. He remembered a dusty street, heat shimmering off the asphalt. His squad moving cautiously between crumbling buildings. He remembered the explosion, the fire, the screaming, the deafening roar. And he remembered pulling what was left of his best friend, Marcus, out of the rubble, blood soaking his uniform, the light already fading from his eyes. You gotta make it, Nate, Marcus had gasped, gripping Nathan's hand with surprising strength. You gotta make it, even if I don't. Nathan squeezed his eyes shut, forcing the memories down. Not now. He finished the last tripwire and crouched behind a stack of rusting barrels, checking his weapon. A battered old Glock Jessica had scrounged up for him. Not much, but better than nothing. Outside, the rain slowed to a drizzle. A heavy silence settled over the city, thick and expectant. Then headlights. Engines. Voices. They were coming. Nathan's heart beat slower. Calmer. He breathed in deeply. Time to finish this. The first two men crept inside, guns drawn, their movements cautious but sloppy. Mercenaries, not soldiers. Nathan waited until they were past him, then moved. Fast. Silent. He struck the first man low, a brutal tackle that drove the air from his lungs. A quick elbow to the temple, and he went down hard. The second man spun, shouting, but Nathan was already on him, grabbing the weapon and twisting it away before driving a knee into his gut. Two down. More were coming. Nathan ducked behind the barrels again as a group of 5 men stormed in, sweeping the area with flashlights and shouts. Jessica's voice crackled softly in his earpiece. "They're moving into the building. About a dozen more." Nathan smiled grimly. "Good." He hit the first tripwire. A cascade of cans and debris crashed down from the ceiling, creating a distraction. The men cursed and scattered. Nathan used the chaos. He moved like a shadow, taking them out one by one. A punch here. A disarm there. A brutal strike to the throat. By the time they realized they were being hunted, half of them were already on the floor. Jessica's voice again, urgent. "Nathan, more inbound. SUVs just pulled up." He grunted acknowledgement. "Time to move." He slipped deeper into the factory, drawing them after him. The second wave was tougher, better trained, better armed. Nathan felt the first bullet graze his shoulder as he dove for cover, the impact spinning him sideways. Pain flared, hot and sharp. He gritted his teeth, ignoring it. "Focus." He returned fire, taking out one man cleanly. Another clipped his leg, but Nathan dropped him with a vicious throw that shattered the man's wrist against a steel beam. Then finally he saw him. The leader. A tall man with a cruel face, standing just outside the factory's broken doors, barking orders. Miguel Santiago. Nathan had seen his type before. Warlords. Kings of broken empires built on fear and blood. Nathan rose from the shadows, blood dripping from his arm, his Glock aimed steady. Miguel spotted him instantly. "That's him," he roared. "Kill that son of a bitch." Nathan fired first. The bullet clipped Miguel's shoulder, spinning him around. Chaos erupted. Jessica's van, parked across the street, transmitted every second live to the city. Millions were watching. Police scanners exploded with chatter. Nathan fought like a man possessed. Every blow, every shot calculated and brutal. He fought for Marcus. He fought for every lost friend. He fought for the city that had never noticed him, until tonight. When the last of Miguel's men fell, groaning and broken, Nathan advanced slowly. Miguel staggered backward, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "You don't know who you're messing with," Miguel spat. Nathan's voice was calm. "I see." "Yeah," he said. "I do." Miguel drew a knife, slashing wildly. Nathan sidestepped easily, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted, hard. The knife clattered to the ground. Miguel swung a desperate punch. Nathan caught it midair and drove his fist into Miguel's gut, folding him like paper. Miguel collapsed, coughing, spitting blood. Police sirens screamed closer. Nathan stood over him, breathing heavily. Jessica's voice crackled into his earpiece, breathless. "They're almost there. Hold on." Nathan stared down at Miguel. "You're done," he said quietly. Miguel laughed weakly, blood staining his teeth. "You think this ends with me?" Nathan knelt, his voice a growl. "No," he said. "It ends with all of you." Miguel's eyes widened slightly. He understood then. Jessica's broadcast had exposed everything. The city wouldn't ignore it anymore. As the first squad cars screeched to a stop outside, Nathan raised his hands, stepping back. Dozens of officers stormed the factory, weapons drawn. Nathan let them cuff him without resistance. He didn't care. His job was done. As they led him outside, flashes erupted, cameras, reporters shouting questions. Nathan blinked against the chaos. Jessica stood at the edge of the crowd, her camera slung over her shoulder, her face grim but proud. Their eyes met for a moment. Nathan gave her a small, tired nod. She returned it, and for the first time in years, Nathan Cole allowed himself a thin, weary smile. Not a hero, just a man who finally did something that mattered. As the patrol car doors slammed shut, Nathan leaned back against the cracked vinyl seat, closing his eyes. The rain had stopped, and somewhere out there, under the clearing sky, the city breathed a little easier. Because tonight, one man had stood up. One man had refused to stay invisible. And even if he disappeared tomorrow, even if no one ever knew his name again, that would be enough. It would have to be. Just another night, Nathan thought. Just another fight. But maybe, just maybe, it was also the beginning of something more. Something worth believing in. Something worth fighting for. He let his head rest against the window, feeling the cold glass against his temple. And he smiled.